I've been looking for you. Got something I'm supposed to deliver. Your hands only. Let's see here. Looks like that's it. Got to go.
So, Brendan, I have yet to watch the new Fallout show. I hear it's amazing. I will definitely watch it. But ever since it's come out and received the acclaim, I have just been thinking to myself about game adaptations overall. Like, I think we talk a lot on the podcast about like how we feel about certain, not even like, did we like this adaptation or not, but just like the growing trend of games becoming TV shows and movies, and like what that means and what's exciting about that and what's maybe a little bit worrying about that.
Yeah, they're the next superheroes.
Exactly. But on a more exciting angle of that, I suddenly realized within me was a person who desperately wants a Elder Scrolls TV show all of a sudden. Because I'm thinking like, what is it that I actually want from a adaptation of a video game? And like for me, on a very, very subjective level, like I think there are some stories that would be cool to see adapted one-to-one. Like I think the Last of Us show is working for a lot of people for that exact reason, which is cool.
Right. You need to change nothing about The Last of Us to make it work as a TV show.
Exactly.
And the few things they did change were very smart and good.
Exactly. But the thing that I would want, the reason I want a Elder Scrolls TV show is that there is so much weird lore of that game that goes completely unexplored. And I think the joy that you and I find in Elder Scrolls is almost never the main plot. Like I don't want it to be, I want nothing with Alduin. I want nothing with Joffrey and giving him the amulet. I want just like, this season's all about the Daedra. This season's all about like this one town where weird shit is happening. You know, like there's so much random little side quests in the world that I think it would be perfect for an episodic story structure. Like basically what I want is TNG, but in Cyrodiil or wherever, where it's like every episode is a little like, we learn this about the Argonians. Like this is all about the Hist tree today. We learn about the trolls that have capes with perfume on the corners so that when humans walk by, they sniff it as if like humans are disgusting. Like that all is in the wikis and it's not in the game at all. And I just really want to see that in some way, you know?
I know
like,
what
this
you
is
mean.
not me just making up stuff to be funny. This is stuff that exists in the lore that is just never present, or is like present in very specific quests and moments. But I think there's a way to maybe have like an adventurer in the world of Elder Scrolls. This episode, they find Meridia's beacon. That's an episode. You know, like that's what I want. Stuff like that. Like have the episodes fit the sort of grab bag storytelling we get when we're playing the game, you know?
Right.
So that's what I want. I'm curious what you would want out of this potentially if they ever made it.
Yeah. So let me start by just talking about the Fallout show real quick, because I have watched the whole thing. I think it's great. In my opinion, personally, I think it's the best video game adaptation I have seen.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I was really surprised by it. And it also sounds like, from at least an interview I read recently, Todd Howard was also pretty surprised by it. So he has obviously been asked the question, is there going to be an Elder Scrolls TV show? And his answer was probably not, but I also didn't think there would be a Fallout TV show until I was approached with a great pitch for one. So that having been said, the Fallout TV show I think is very interesting because it is, for all intents and purposes, a show where you are following a video game protagonist. Like the main character, Lucy, of the Fallout TV show is a video game protagonist who is like, maybe not visually, you're not seeing it happen in the TV show like through numbers, but you can tell that she's leveling up in some ways. Like you get the sense, yes, you get the sense because of her character having an arc that she is starting as a level 1 vault dweller, and by the end of the show is probably level like 3 at least, based on some of the things that she's accomplished.
It reminds me of the D&D movie that came out somewhat recently. Similar thing, like that movie has two characters that have been doing this for a long time, adventuring together for a long time. You can tell they're probably like level 5, you know? And then there are the new characters that are like brand new to adventuring, and like they don't say like, what are you, level 1, and like ruin the whole thing, but like you can tell that the mechanics of D&D inform some of the character decisions and story beats. Like I when I talk to my friends about that movie, like you can tell when they rolled a 1 in certain moments.
Yes.
Like Chris Pine trying to cast the illusion spell and then it like warps and scares everyone away. It's
Totally.
so funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a clever way of like internalizing the game of it all, but not shouting it out directly.
Yeah. The thing about the Fallout show is like there is technically a plot to the show, right? There is like a holistic thing that Lucy is trying to accomplish when she leaves the vault. She has a reason to leave and a reason to be exploring the wasteland, which is that she's looking for her father, who's played by Kyle MacLachlan, very well. What that allows from a TV show writing perspective is like she can just go have a little arc over in a town that's a little bit like Megaton or something, you know, in one episode, and then the next episode be like in a bog somewhere fighting a bunch of like weird radiation creatures, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel like the Fallout show has in some ways given license to the thing that you're describing here. But what I also like is that it's reminding me a bit of what is so successful about Free Run the Wanderer, which is like a great anime that I, and it seems like everybody else on the planet, is watching simultaneously right now.
Yeah.
Which is about a party of adventurers after they have defeated the Demon King, and they need to go back to the place where they fought the Demon King to like get something. I won't say what it is, but they have to get something. That is like on a high level, technically, the quote unquote quest of the show, but it's so not about that at all. It's so about what Freeran and the crew get up to when like they make it, you know, a couple miles north towards where the Demon King's castle was, and they're like, oh, this blizzard is going to last 8 months. What are we going to do? And then it's just an episode about them hanging out with another like hot elf guy who like just lives in the woods and teaches them how to cut down trees and like make firewood and stuff. And like,
and that's exactly
episode.
what I want. That's what I want from Elder Scrolls, like a hot elf in the blizzard, you know?
Right.
Like,
and it's gonna be that weird or weirder all the time because of what is intrinsically great about the Elder Scrolls. See, I think this is the thing that I've been really sticking with as I've been thinking about this prompt. The one worry I have is that what I think most people associate with and want from an Elder Scrolls show is very different from what you and I love about the Elder Scrolls.
Right.
That accidental camp aspect of a lot of Bethesda's work, honestly, because of the way like characters zoom in when you talk to them, like you just get right up in their face and stuff like that. It creates this unintentional comedy. And when you pair that with like the actual violence that's happening and the story that is taking itself very seriously despite all of that comedy, what you end up with is just this like absolutely absurd bananas lore. Like, you know, finding multiple issues of the Lusty Argonian Maid when you're like raiding somebody's
Yes.
house. Like that aspect of the Elder Scrolls is the thing that keeps me coming back to it time and time again, is like, yes, they've made a really beautiful world that I want to hang out in. And like mechanically the game is fun, but at the end of the day, it is just so funny all the time. And I have a feeling if they made an Elder Scrolls show, like that would probably not be first and foremost, like, the index card they put up in the writer's room is like camp.
I feel like the biggest mistake would be to make a Skyrim show and it would basically be Game of Thrones. It would be
Exactly.
like Jarls competing for power as dragons come closer to the land.
Right.
And that's just so boring to me.
That's not to say you can't have that stuff, and it doesn't actually.
Sure.
It helps the comedy and the camp of the Elder Scrolls to every once in a while have a moment that is taking itself very seriously and like sticking the landing there. That fluctuation between those two wildly opposite ends of the spectrum is actually one of the things that makes that franchise work.
Yeah, and that's where it gets into like, how do you adapt that, right? Because I think something that I talk about a lot when this conversation comes up, either between us or with friends, is like the more we do this show, the more I start to broaden my definition of what narrative is in games. Like narrative to me can mean The Last of Us, which again is like very much one-to-one. Like there are some moments of that game, actually there are many moments of that game that are heightened by the fact that you are playing it. You know, I think the finale of the first game carries a lot more weight because you're asked to do those things as Joel than if you just watched a cutscene.
Totally.
But ultimately the story is playing out in a way, the same way it would for a TV show or a movie. But I consider moments like in Breath of the Wild when I just find a mountain that I really want to climb, and it takes me like maybe an hour to like budget my stamina enough and like cheese the game enough to get to the top. And then when I finally do, it's a different time of day in the game, and then the piano comes in, and then I maybe see the silhouette of what remains of a village in the distance. And like, that's not a moment that was scripted. That's a moment that I kind of forged for myself. But all of the design of like the limitation of stamina, like the human limit of Link, the design of the world, the hopeful but sad views of like just wilderness and then maybe a pocket of civilization, like all of that to me is narrative in an equal way that a cutscene is. I mean, I think maybe a more like clear example of what I'm trying to say is like Shadow of the Colossus, I think is something you just cannot adapt to anything that is in a game, because so much of that game is that design by subtraction philosophy, and so much of it is just the raw atmosphere of like going to a destination in silence, basically. And the more colossi you defeat, the more you start to question like, is this good? Should I be doing this? I feel like whenever I kill one, I inhale a lot of black smoke and faint. Maybe this isn't a good idea. I think the fact that the game lets you consider that on your own as your character is driven, for reasons that you may not know directly. And then again, like this struggle, you could probably have a really breathtaking film that shows those fights in a really exciting and cool way, but nothing will match like the actual anxiety you feel when you're running out of stamina, holding on to a flying like stone eagle, and then you let go and fall in the water.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that's why I think I bristle a little bit at the games that do get adaptations. And I worry at the idea of like, The Last of Us getting its show is really exciting. I love that game. I haven't watched the show yet, but I'm sure it's great. But there's like there's a part of me that's like, it feels like there's this unsaid thing like, oh, this is the game with the good story. This is the game that gets the HBO show because it's like the one game with a good story. And I just so reject that notion. Like, I haven't heard anyone actually say that. And maybe I'm just like making a lot out of nothing, but that's why I'm like a little bit hesitant to get super excited all these various adaptations. However, I think like games that allow for these like emergent moments that are either so funny or so campy or so interesting, and also like outside of all of that, I just think the lore, I've mentioned this in passing already, but like the lore of Elder Scrolls and like even just the Daedra themselves, I think you could have a whole show about the Daedra. I just think there's like so many unexplored possibilities that I do think would fit a show format really well. I think it would fit like an episodic story really well. So what I want is Patrick Stewart to be brought back in as the Emperor, because it's a little bit easier, I think, for Fallout to have that kind of fish out of water protagonist leaving the vault and learning this world alongside the audience. You can't really do that in Elder Scrolls unless there's like, they usually do like you're escaping the prison or the dungeon and stuff, but that already kind of casts the character as like, well, why were they in prison?
Right.
Why were they, here or there?
They're always like in their 30s and in prison. And it's like, what happened before that though? Like it's cool that I'm a blank slate and I can turn this person to whoever I want, but they definitely were somebody before this.
So here's my pitch. If you're listening, Todd, give me like some person that works at a tavern in one of the major cities in any continent in the world of Elder Scrolls. And maybe they like get deceived by a Daedra and that kicks off their whole quest, because the Daedra are always preying on innocent people that like maybe want something.
Yeah.
It can kind of kick off like any Greek myth where it's like, so-and-so was looking out the window, then Zeus appeared as a ray of light, and now there's a half-horse guy running around. Like, I feel like it could be something like that, where, and again, this is just very easy for me just to muse on what I would like, but I do think there's something there, and I think it's beyond just, like, do a Game of Thrones or a Lord of the Rings. I think there's a very unique show that could exist based on Elder Scrolls stuff.
I do think the idea of like a random person who lives in Cyrodiil getting got by a Daedra does actually set up like a great multi-season kind of finale where it's like they are questing to figure out how to even like get in contact with a demigod again. Mm-hmm. And of course you're just going to run into a bunch of weird stuff along the way, like necromancers and dark elves and just like a whole bunch of weird stuff in the woods. That sounds great to me. I wonder, in this world in which Fallout is like a successful TV show, the Dungeons and Dragons movie that you already mentioned like was pretty successful and people seem to like it a lot. Yeah. Nintendo is, believe it or not, working on a Legend of Zelda movie now officially with like the person who directed the Planet of the Apes movies. I wonder if like we're not only getting closer to video game adaptations becoming more of the norm, as we said at the beginning, but like also fantasy kind of making a comeback, like 80s high fantasy. Because if all of that starts to happen and coalesce, then you do kind of get the exact perfect little petri dish of specimens that could grow into an Elder Scrolls TV show. Like, it feels like it's not that wild of an idea to think that this is a possibility, and how much I would love for it to be exactly what you're talking about. Just like a weird, episodic, super strange, like high art experience. I think that'd be great. I would love it.
Todd, if you want a good pitch, you know where to find us. Our ideas are yours.
Yeah. Feel free to take any of this, Todd.
Do credit us, but yeah.
I don't even need credits. I just want it.
I just want to be the guy, this is my idea. Let's go on TV at a bar. Yeah, I thought of that. The Daedra visits the guy at the bar.
Just like me. Maybe a Daedra will visit me.
Maybe Shea Gorath will knock on my door.
Any last thoughts about an Elder Scrolls TV show before we sign off?
I mean, you mentioning the 80s stuff, I wonder if an animation is on the table at all. Like, kind of lean into like maybe like a 70s Tolkien animation vibe for this. That's the only way I would accept maybe a more kind of like main story Arthurian tale in the Elder Scrolls world. Like if it's live action, I want the episodic kind of everyman character. But if it's an animation, then I can take the Alduin and stuff, because it will inherently be corny and that will clash well with the importance of the main story.
I love that. Yeah, I'm all in favor of that. All right. Well, hey, I think that's going to do it for us here on this edition of Out of the Aether. You know what to do: like, comment, subscribe, etc. Share this with a friend. That'd be great. And I don't know how you get in touch with Todd, but tell Todd you want an Elder Scrolls show. I'll do it. You do it.
Mike the Liar's journal. It's just Mike the Liar checking in every week, telling you something new.
Oh my God. What if it was just like Seinfeld, but starring Mike the Liar? Like, it opened with him doing stand-up, and then it was just like him hanging out outside of like pick any city with his buds.
What's the deal with Whiterun? Yeah, exactly.
All right.
On that note, we should probably go. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everybody.